Alrighty, so before I get started with our presentation, I just want to go over the principles of community real quick. Chances are you all have seen this many of times during your time here at CSU. I just do it because when we're talking about career, sometimes we're talking about some really personal things, things that have to do with identity. And so I'm hoping we can create a respectful space here. And then I also encourage you all to hold me accountable to this as well. And I'll hold folks accountable for breaking principles. All righty. So just curious where you all are at in terms of where you're at in your process. Are most of you, I'm assuming, are either graduating, most of you probably in the May, but some of you in December. So if you all would just put in the chat, where are you right now in your process, whether that's going career or to grad school? And when you're saying which one you're doing, where, if you all could tell me like where you're at. Okay, so searching for jobs out of state, unsure of when exactly I should start applying. Okay, that's a good question. We'll talk about that today. And it's perfectly fine to still be in the exploration stage. I know that's not listed on here. Searching for internships and jobs. Cool, cool. Looking for grad school in and out of state, looking for jobs. That's good for me to know that some of you are looking out of state. Let me make sure I talk about that in case there's any nuances that show up. Cool, graduating in May. May already have a job, nice. Career, just signed with the company last week, looking for programs within the company to see if they can pay for grad school. Oh, nice, congrats. Looking for a job, sweet. I'm trying to apply to a career, but not known, cool. Alrighty, we're gonna move forward because we have a lot to cover, but please still put things in the chat there. I'm gonna drop that assessment link one more time. If you haven't checked in, if you can do that for me, I'd appreciate it. Alrighty, so like I said, we're going to be talking about those 4 different topics today. We're going to start off with making connections, also known as networking. I just want to acknowledge real quick that networking isn't necessarily set up for everyone's success, right? Some of us are in situations where we already have more in our network than others. And then also just like extrovertness of it, as well as people tend to mentor and network with folks who look like them, who think like them. And so there are some inequities within the system. And I feel like it would be a disservice for me not to talk about making connections because they can be very fruitful when they are successful. Alrighty, so normally when we're in person, I have you all share with each other what you're hoping to do someday. So instead, I'm going to ask you all to engage in the chat again. It's okay if you do not have an answer to this question. You can be very broad with it, but some of you might already have an idea of the type of work you're hoping to do someday. So if you all wouldn't mind putting that in the chat for me. I love how much variety we have in this list here. So I'm going to encourage you all to take a minute and make sure you're reading the chat as well. So looking at what some of your peers are writing. Nice. So or in person, you have that you all share this one-on-one with each other or in pairs. And you all just engage in some form of networking. So what you've done here is you've set yourself up. So now some of your peers know what you're hoping to do. And so that might mean that someone will have something for you later on. Granted, right now you're all graduating soon. And so you might not be at the place where you have the opportunity to start this, but Okay, that chat comment was amazing. So someone put in the chat, letting someone else know about an internship that might be available to them. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can use your peers as your network as well. Thank you for offering that up. All righty. And so why is this important for your job search? Right? We know that connections can lead to jobs. That's going to be the main reason. When you're putting your resume out there to folks who don't know you, you just have a less chance of them calling you back. Not to say it won't happen, not to say you won't get an interview, but as we all know, if you know someone who's applying, it's going to give you a better opportunity for that. Okay, so how can you intentionally set yourself up for opportunities to connect with folks? I'm just going to go over a few here. So attending career center events, especially the job fair and other connect events we have. I hope some of you took advantage of our recent career fair and even our connect event that happened last week. It was a great opportunity to meet one-on-one with some employers. Now, one thing I'll note about this is sometimes you'll look at the list of employers and you might be like, well, none of these are really companies I'm interested in, or what they have posted right now is not the type of job I'm looking for. And I encourage you all to think about how these connections could lead to other connections, or can even lead to connections within that company. So for example, actually, let me pick one of the ones that you all actually said versus making one up. So something in conservation with wildlife or natural resources is a great example. So you might be looking at an organization that, let's say, natural parks National Parks and Services is attending an event, and what they have posted are things related to like management type stuff, so like HR and that sort of thing. And you might be like, well, I'm not interested in talent acquisition or HR, but I am interested in that organization. I would still encourage you to attend the career event, because you can talk to the recruiter about what you're interested in and they can connect you with someone within that department. I think another good example is like Progressive Insurance. They came to our career fair. And now when you think Progressive Insurance, your top thought might be like customer service, because generally that's what we all deal with insurance companies, is that end of it. However, they were actually looking for software engineers. And so this breaking up what you assume a company can do, and recognizing all the different aspects of a company and how you can possibly find a place that will provide you with the sorts of job that you're looking for. Another thing is to ask the job shadow. So if you know folks, or if, you have your family and friends and they have family and friends, and connecting with each other, the idea here is that you're setting yourself up for opportunities to connect. So the more you're talking about what you're hoping to do, the higher chance that someone's going to be able to make a connection for you. Another thing is to volunteer. I know volunteer work sometimes some of us can't do because we need to be working to pay our bills. And so I acknowledge that. And you have opportunities to volunteer, especially within the community. You can make connections that way, even if what you're volunteering for isn't related to your job. So for example, let's say you do Habitat for Humanity and you do it with a family, a couple of families. Usually it's a mixture of folks who attend those sorts of things. So you sign up for a Saturday, you have no idea what jobs those people are going to hold who are volunteering. So those can be opportunities for connections as well. Get involved on campus. So student organizations are a great way of getting connected with folks and getting involved in your community. And then attending faculty's office hours. Your faculty can be great connections as well. Alrighty, so getting involved, informational interviews and networking events. We will talk more about informational interviews in a little bit here. So things you can start doing today. Ask your peers what they hope to be doing in their future and then sharing with them. Talk about your career hopes and dreams. Ask those in your community about their path. Message some CSU alum on LinkedIn, and I'll show you all how to do that in a moment. And then be prepared to tell your story for when the opportunity arises. And we'll be going over that in a minute as well. So first thing first is this is LinkedIn. And this is what we call the alumni search tool. So really all you do is you go into LinkedIn. You have to have an account to do this. Your account doesn't have to be perfect to do this though. And what you do is you put in the search bar, Colorado State University, and then you click on it when it pops up. Don't click on Colorado State University Alumni Association. I know I said this is called an alumni search tool, but it's actually on the CSU's page. So when you click on it, this should pop up. This number is actually higher now from when I took this screenshot about a year ago. There's about 200,000 alum on here. And you can search on here for folks who are in positions that you might be interested in areas you might be interested in. So specifically those of you who are looking to go out of state, and you can start connecting with them. And so this is how I recommend doing it. So you go and you find an alum. So let's say writing software. So you find someone who's doing software at a company that you're interested in, or that you know is going to be at the career fair, and you want to get a little more information before you attend or before you speak with a recruiter. So you put in the search bar software, and let's say there's someone who pops up. In this case, their name is Shauna. You're going to click on connect, and then it allows you, it says connect, and then it says add a message. I recommend always adding a message because it's going to increase the chance of Shauna responding back to you. And so we click add message, and this is what shows up, and we get 300 characters to do this. So the first thing I do is I introduce myself as well as what we have in common. So I'd say, hi, Shauna, my name is Jenny, and I'm soon to be a CSU alum like yourself. So you're immediately making that connection that you have. And then depending on what you're hoping to get out of this connection, you might just say, I'm just hoping to connect here on LinkedIn. So say you just are trying to expand your network within LinkedIn, it's a perfectly acceptable way of doing it. Now, let's say you actually want to talk to Shauna. So I might say, I might add on, I was hoping I could have 10 to 15 minutes of your time to talk about your experience at X company. So we're being very upfront with what it is we're asking for. We're being honest. That's what we're hoping for. And then we send that invitation. Now, the question I get is, how successful are folks doing this? And I'm going to say it's going to depend on the industry, and it's going to depend on how often folks are using their LinkedIn. There's a good majority of folks who are only using LinkedIn when they are looking for a job. So the chances of them getting back to you aren't relatively high. Well, whereas other folks like talent acquisition folks are in the system all the time. So what I usually recommend is send 10 to 20 of them, and hopefully you'll hear back from one or two. Low risk activity, hopefully, copying and pasting, right? And you're just kind of changing the name in there. Or if there's anything particularly interesting that you see, you can add that to the message, make it more personal. Alrighty, and then we have emailing and new connections. So let's say you went on LinkedIn, you really wanted to talk to Shauna, they didn't get back to you, but you went to their company's website and you found their email address. And you're like, okay, I want to connect with this person. Or let's say you met somebody at a career fair or at a conference or something, and you're just trying to email them to reconnect. So we address the person, dear name, hello name, introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself. So even if you've met them before, say, hi, sorry, lost my train of thought. Hi, Jose, my name is Jenny. We met at the summit the other week, and I'm just hoping to reconnect and maybe have 10, 15 minutes of your time to talk more about the opportunities that you have at X company. So once again, making it clear what you're asking for. And then feel free to contact me either here on email or give me a call or text. Here's my phone number. So whatever you're comfortable providing in terms of that contact information, and then ending the email. Thank you for your time. Respectfully, Jenny. Never email your resume without writing something in the email, or share your resume just using Google Drive. And what I mean by that is you can share your resume by giving a link to Google Drive, but don't just use that share button within Google Drive to send it, because then the person just gets an email that says, Jenny has shared a document with you, and they might not know why you've sent that to them. This is especially true if you've met someone at a career event and they told you, send me your resume. Still put some stuff in that information in the email so they remember why you are sending it to them. All right. So someone agreed to an informational interview. Now what? So an informational interview is really, you're interviewing a person to get information, is what that means. So you're talking to them about their experience with the company, or their experience with their job search, or their experience with the type of work that they're doing. Information interviewing is also helpful if you're still exploring your options and you're not 100% sure what it is you want to do. This is a great way to get some information of folks of like what their day-to-day looks like, or if that's something that you would want to be doing 40 hours a week. So how to prepare for an informational interview. So let's say someone said yes to your LinkedIn request or your email. Be prepared to talk about yourself. And I'm actually go to another slide in a minute here where I'm gonna go like, what exactly does that mean? Because I feel like sometimes I can feel very broad. Have specific questions that aren't easily Googleable. Let conversations unravel naturally and ask for advice and referrals. The best thing you can do at the end of an informational interview is say, thank you for your time. Is there anyone else you think I should talk to? Because now that one connection is going to start connecting you with their connections. And that's how your network is going to expand, especially if that first connection doesn't have exactly what you're looking for. They can connect you with someone who is closer to that. Alrighty, so here's the tell me about yourself question. First, I just want to say it's okay if you do not have an answer to all these questions. These are very I feel like from the time we're 5, we're asked what we're going to do when we grow up. And it can become very daunting for some folks. And so if you don't have all the answers, that is okay. Here are some things to consider when answering the tell me about yourself when you're networking with someone. So first is, how did you become interested in the field or industry? So if you already have a sense of the field or industry you want to be in, where does that interest come from? Being thoughtful of what parts of your story are relevant and you want to share. So sometimes there's pieces of our story. I think a good example is, let's say you're hoping to be a social worker and and that interest comes from being in the system as a child yourself. You do not have to share that part of your story because that's a very personal thing to share. And so I just want to give you all the power back of, it's up to you what parts of the story you want to share. What are you hoping to achieve? What is the goal you have for yourself? What are some experiences you have that you could use in the industry or field? But tell me about yourself, 2 to 3 minutes. That might seem very short, but if you try doing it later on, you might find that, oh my goodness, 2 to 3 minutes is a bit to fill. And so thinking through some of these questions can be helpful. Oh, I should note, I will be sending out this presentation later so that you all have it. Okay. All right, before we go into online presence, questions. Any questions? Okay, we're gonna do this activity now. So if questions come up, still put them in the chat. What I'd like you all to do is, if you if you can pull up some sort of browser and Google yourself. So some of the ways I find it's easiest to find yourself, especially if you're like me and have a very common name, is to put your name and then like the city you live, or Colorado State University, or some organization you're affiliated with that might show up on your resume. Tell me about this. Sorry, there's a question in here. Folks, do this activity for me, and I want you to think about these questions. What assumptions can be made about you based on what is found, whether they're true or not? How does bias or stereotyping show up? What are things you're okay with employers knowing about you that are on the internet? What is currently available that you wish was not? And what is not available about yourself that you wish was there? I know that's a lot of questions, so if you want to engage with one of them, but try to find yourself by Googling, and I will take a look at this question here and answer it in a moment. When I did this, I think Facebook was like the first thing that showed up. So this is also a good time to check in, especially if you do this in a private browser, so you're not actually logged into your social media, to see what is public about you. I think Facebook changes their security settings all the time. So I thought everything of mine was private, and then suddenly things weren't, especially timeline photos and profile photos. Gonna give you all like another 30 seconds. Hopefully you're able to find yourself, or maybe not. Maybe you don't want to be findable, and that's fine as well. But the question I really want you to all engage with here is, what is not available online that you wish was there? Because that's what we're going to talk about next, is LinkedIn and how to make sure that the stuff you want employers to see is available. And then I think it's also important to note the bias piece of it, especially in LinkedIn when your photo's showing up, so folks can make some assumptions about some of your identities, as well as different things you've been a part of, religious organizations, political organizations, so on and so forth, and how assumptions might be made there as well. I'm not saying that you need to hide any of this about yourself. I just want you all to get an opportunity to engage with what is available. That way you have the choice, and you're aware of what you can choose to or not to have. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. If we have time later, I'm going to ask you all what are some interesting things that showed up. I found my 8th grade science fair project. All righty, so 3 things people notice on LinkedIn: photo, name, and what you're currently doing. And so these are the 3 things I want to talk about real quick. First, photo. We recommend usually have a photo from shoulders up. And then name can be your preferred name. And then lastly, what will show up here is it will automatically be your most current experience. So for example, Ashley here, laboratory animal care, is probably what they're currently doing, and then the degree that they hold. Now you can change this, and I recommend you do change this. So Larry's a good example here, who has student psychological sciences, leadership, and I'm not sure what the other thing is, but what they've decided to do is they've decided to add what it is they want a recruiter or a potential connection to see first about them. So things that are important to them. I don't particularly encourage student. I think there's usually some other words out there that we might want to show up first. So for example, we can't see what leadership and is because they've decided to put student first. And so I usually put things that are relevant. So I think mine says career education, because that's what I work in, LLC owner, because I own a small business. And then I think I have student affairs, which is the name of the profession that I'm in. So yep, I already said all this. I didn't realize I had it on this slide. Okay, so, oh yeah, there it is, perfect. So your headline. So I recommend not hitting your little scroll thing. You'll appear in more LinkedIn searches by using strategic keywords. So picking words that are relevant to your industry can be helpful. So like I said, not a big fan of student. Also, after you graduate, if you don't have a current experience, and by current, I mean like in your LinkedIn, it doesn't have like a current experience, it would also read unemployed instead as well. And so consider what are the words that you want a recruiter to associate with you, or that if you were on the recruiter side looking for someone to fill a job, what are some of those keywords you would put in? Alrighty, now the summary on LinkedIn profiles, I feel like is the biggest question I get, is like, what goes on here? So I like to use these questions on the right, and granted, you do not have to answer every single one of these questions. They're just a guidance to help you determine what it is that you could be writing about. So describing what motivates you, what you're skilled at, what's next. A good thing to note as well is that on your LinkedIn page, only your first 2.5 sentences will show up on your page, and you have to click see more to see the rest of it. So when you're thinking about what do you want that first 1 or 2 sentences to be, you want it to be something that captures your reader's attention or would make me want to read more. That's why these are kind of the questions that show up first. I'm going to actually drop in the chat right now a screenshot of this so that you all have it in case you want it later. All righty. We're halfway through, which is perfect because we have 2 more topics to cover. We're going to go into resumes. But before we do, any questions about LinkedIn? All right, as always, as questions arise, even if they're about stuff I've covered, please put them into the chat. All righty, so I'd like you all to take a minute here and look at these two resumes. You don't have to read them word for word. I just want your first initial thoughts about them. So we're going to call the resume on the left resume number 1, or you can call it left. And the one on the right is going to be number 2, or you can refer to it as 2. But what I'd like you all to do is in the chat, just let me know your thoughts about these. And I know my name is on both of them. Don't worry. These aren't my resumes. You won't hurt my feelings by putting some critical feedback in there as well. So what are your thoughts that come up about these two resumes? Sweet. So you all are pointing out some things that I'm glad that you did. So first, the white space or the blank space that's happening on the first one. For the most part, you are all going to have a 1-page resume. It's kind of what's expected from employers. This can differ based on industry, but for the most part, after completing a bachelor's degree, a 1-page is usually what folks are looking for. And so with that being said, the one on the left has a lot of white space, which means they're not utilizing the page enough. I know the one on the right looks like it's not using the full page. That's just based on the weird cropping of it. I think there's also another section for volunteer experience I just don't have in that screenshot because I couldn't fit them both on the same page. So let's pretend that they're both 1 page. I see number 2 looks more professional. I am curious, how do you define professional? It's just a big question I like to ask folks in general, and who gets to decide what is professional. But I get what you're saying. The one on the left doesn't add much, right? And so, and someone else mentioned descriptions. Alrighty, perfect. Thank you all. So I like to do this activity whenever I start resumes because I like to just point out you all already have some knowledge. You all already know an idea of what you like and what you don't like, or what an employer might be looking for. Oh, thank you for that. The language that is used in the organization of the resume is kind of what determines professionalism for me. Thank you. Yeah, so language, organization, that's a word that tends to show up a lot when I do this activity, is which is more organized. I also like how this one says unpaid jobs and paid jobs, and recognizing that experience is experience regardless if it's paid or not. But we're going to get in more detail now. So thank you all for engaging with that. So what experience counts? It all does. What it really comes down to is what is relevant and what is transferable. And we'll be talking about transferability in a moment here. When we write our experiences, so I'm actually going to put a resume in the chat for you all to take a look at. This resume also has a cover letter attached to it. I'm going to put it as a PDF. Let's see if I have the Word doc of it as well. I'm going to put it as a Word doc too, just in case you would prefer that. So it's going to look a little bit different than the one that's on here, but granted, it's going to be relatively the same. So what you're going to notice on the resume are those bullet points. And those bullet points are how we're talking about our experience. And that first resume doesn't use what I like to call as the bullet point formula, whereas the second one hopefully does. And what that formula is that we start with an action verb. Most folks already know this. Then we go into a skill set, and then we end in a result, a purpose, or an accomplishment. And so I want to take a look here, actually. JK. I'm gonna go back a minute. So we have assist, right? So that's our action verb. All students who come into the dining hall by checking on over 100 students every hour, developing skills to succeed in working in fast-paced environments. So assist is our action verb. What we did is we were checking in over 100 students every hour. And then our result was that we developed skills to work in a fast-paced environment. So sometimes our result could be developing skills. Sometimes it could just be the purpose. So one I like to give is like customer service, for example. So if you said like provided customer service to ensure customers return, right? Some of you might think, well, Jenny, isn't it obvious that the reason we do customer service is so that employees return? Yes, you could say it is. And I think when we add the purpose to our bullet point, what it demonstrates is your ability to reflect and understand why you do the work you do. And the reason that is important is, generally speaking, when folks know and understand their purpose, they're more motivated. And granted, hopefully you have a better time doing your job when you know why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, tangent aside, so that's bullet points, and we're gonna go more in depth in that in a moment here. But first thing we'll talk about is action verbs. What tense should they be in? Past tense if it's already a completed experience. So if it's something that already has an end date on it, created, facilitated, organized. And then if it is a current experience, we want present tense, create, facilitate, organize. It sounds really weird for the stuff that is currently happening. Like naturally I want to do like creating, facilitating, or creates, facilitates. And for some odd reason, it is create, facilitate, organize. Okay, so, oh, you know what? This slide is not updated, but I will say this, that the question I'm about to ask you looks relatively similar every year that this data is run. So the National Association of College and Employers asks employers of what they are looking for in resumes for recent grads. And they refer to it as attributes. I refer to it more as like transferable skills. And here's what shows up on the list. And like I said, it's a little bit different this year, but for the most part, the stuff is all the same. It's just in a different order. So problem solving skills, ability to work on a team, communication, both written and verbal, leadership, work ethic, quantitative skills, initiative, detail-oriented, flexibility, and adaptability. The reason I like to share these is that sometimes you'll look at a job description, internship description, and it's not particularly detailed, or it could be very short. And then you're like, well, what do I write about on my resume then? And usually I say, these skills are some good ones to fall back on. So if you're like, well, the description wasn't particularly clear, I would recommend at least writing about problem solving skills, teamwork, and communication, and a couple of these ones. Okay, so we're actually going to practice writing a bullet point now, which is why we try to get through all this content, and I know it's a lot. So what I have here on the left is a very broad job description. It's intentionally broad, because I know you all have different interests and different areas you're hoping to go into. So it's a brief job description. So the person in this role will work on multiple teams throughout the organization, developing new ways to engage clients. They will also be a point person for working with new clients and leading the new client orientation team. The requirements for the job are: applicant must have a bachelor's degree or higher in a related field. Applicant must have effective communication skills, both verbally and written, and applicant must have experience working in team environments. So what I'd like you all to do is think about an experience you've had in the past 5 years. Be a student org, it can be on-campus employment, it can be an internship, it could be a volunteer, it could be anything. And I'd like you to write a bullet point statement as it relates to this job posting on the left. So that means you need to identify some of the skills that this employer is looking for. And I'm not going to have you all share your bullet points with each other. I will ask for those who are comfortable to share in the chat what they came up with. And we're going to take a few minutes here, so feel free to take care of your needs and write a good bullet point. Sorry about that. Okay, and I'm also going to drop in the chat a link to an action verb document, because sometimes I feel like the action verb is where we can get stuck. And so I'm going to put 2 different files in here. You can choose whichever one works better for you. They're organized in a little bit different ways. I would say the second one is maybe a little less overwhelming than the first one because it doesn't have as many action verbs, but in case it's helpful, there's some to consider. Any questions? And I put the formula for the bullet point down here as well, so you all still have it. All right, let's do 3 minutes on this. All righty. Anybody have any bullet points they want to share? I also want to acknowledge 3 minutes is not a long time to write a bullet point, and bullet points can take a good portion of time. When I make those mock resumes, each of those just experiences usually takes me about an hour. And so I also understand if you don't have one fully written out. I like to do the activity because I think it also helps identify like, ooh, do I need help with this? And if that is the case, we have drop-ins, we have appointments. I'll cover that at the end of the presentation. But just wanted you all to engage a little bit with the material. Any questions come up while you all were writing those? Alrighty. If you are in the process of writing a bullet point you want to share, please continue to write it. If you want to private message me one too, because you just want to know, like, am I on the right track? Feel free to do that. And I'll take a look at them as I continue here. All right, so what else goes on a resume? Accomplishments can be in a section, certifications. I didn't talk about a list of skills, so I'll talk about that in a minute. A summary profile, some folks like to do that, or their objective. I like to reserve all that information for our cover letter, and I tend to put a qualification section on a resume. So that mock resume I sent you all has a qualification section to give you an idea what I do there. The qualification section is actually where I will tweak the resume based on the job I'm applying for. So that's where I make sure it's clear I meet minimum qualifications or the qualifications that are there. So it's easy for the hiring manager to check mark, yes, yes, yes. Or if it's a computer software program your resume is being put into, it very clearly can capture that information about you. You can also put your affiliations with groups, student clubs, Greek life, etc. This is another place where bias might show up, especially if your student organization or club is related to identity. Greek life, the same thing. Folks could have stereotypes and that sort of thing about fraternities and sororities and that sort of thing. So a good thing to be mindful of. And if you're like, so I encourage you all to do whatever is comfortable for you. If you're like, no, I want to clearly put on there what student org I was part of, great, do it. If you're like, I need a job so I can pay my rent at the end of the month, and I'm worried that I'm not going to get interviews because of something, then we can talk about, are there ways to still write about that experience where we're not identifying the specific organization or those sorts of things, so that you still get to talk about those skills. So it'll be dependent upon you and what you want to do on the resume. Don't put your photo on a resume. LinkedIn profile or portfolio websites can also go on that header, but once again, they don't have to. And then GPA. Some folks will put GPA, especially if they're really proud of it. I would also say, for the most part, there's no requirement to put a GPA on a resume. There are some internships that have GPA requirements, and if you meet that, I recommend just throwing it right there on the resume so it's very clear you meet that requirement. Otherwise, it's up to you. Okay, list of skills or competencies. So that was listed on that resume one. To be honest, I'm not a fan of skill sections. So how I imagine is this. If I walked into this presentation right now, or I signed on and I told you all, hello, my name is Jenny and I'm a team player. What's the likelihood? How much will you believe me? But if I can write an experience, worked on a team with 5 others to create a large course project where we did X, Y, and Z and contributed my thoughts and ideas while managing other folks' perspectives. Now the chances are you're going to believe that teamwork skill a little bit better because I've actually given you context and made it clear that I have it. And so that's why I choose not to have a skill section. I feel like they also have a lot of white space, and it's just not as anyone can write a skill, right? But to talk about how do you utilize it, it gives the employer a better idea and it paints a picture for them of you actually doing that work. So when it comes to writing your resume and how you use that one page, what everything is going to really come down to is what is relevant, what is transferable, and what are you okay with an employer knowing about you. I know I said I was going to talk about transferable skills. To be honest, I don't think I have a slide on it, so I'm going to talk about that here right now. So I talked a little bit about skills, and I would actually argue that all the things on the right here are transferable skills. So these are generally skills that any employer is going to want, that we utilize in almost every experience that we have. And so you might have, for example, in that mock resume I showed earlier, it was an Allison Dining Services student employment opportunity. And you might be thinking, well, I'm going into a career in construction. How is this relevant? Well, talking with customers is going to be relevant. Communicating with your team is relevant. Working on a team is relevant. Solving folks' problems is relevant, right? So the idea of a transferable skill is, it's how do we take an experience that seems not in the field or seems disconnected from what we're hoping to do and demonstrate all those great skills we used in it that are still usable in the field we're going into next. Okay. One of those slides where I have to click through everything. Alrighty. Questions about resumes. I usually can do a full hour presentation on resumes and still not say everything I want to say. So I know that was a very quick peek into resumes. We also have a resume guide on our website. I'll show you all how to get to that in a minute. I always put my full name on the top of my resume, even though I do not go by my full name. Question marks. I'm assuming the question there is, do you have to do that? Or is just an acknowledgement? So I actually, that's a great one. So my full name is not Jenny, it's Jennifer. And I only go by Jennifer when I'm in trouble. And so everything, my resume says Jenny, everything says Jenny. The only time you have to use like whatever's on your documents is when you're actually going through the hiring process and you're filling out your I-9 and those sorts of things. So if you're going into an employer and you're like, I don't even want them to call me, maybe you just have a preferred name too, right? Mine's a shortening of my name. Some folks might have a different name they go by altogether. There could be folks also with trans identity, gender nonconforming, who have a name that they prefer. You can put that on there. You do not have to acknowledge the like full legal name until you start filling out that documentation. Okay, cover letters. Right? Yeah, when you have your, I've had that experience before where like my resume, it was in high school, my resume said Jennifer. I was introduced as Jennifer and I was Jennifer from then on out. And it wasn't one of those situations where I could easily correct folks specifically based on the clients I was working with. And so I had to go by Jennifer and it wasn't a fun time for me. So yeah, correcting them later is always fun. Okay, cover letters, more detail highlights. So what I usually hear is, but I already showed them everything in my resume. And I like to reframe this to, now I get to let myself shine, give more context, and tell them why we're a good match. To me, a cover letter is a letter to an employer, and we're going to go more in depth about our experience. We're going to paint a picture of ourselves already doing the job. We're going to paint a picture of what it looks like for us to be in the world of work. We're going to leave any opportunity for implicit stuff to be explicit. And we're not going to assume the employer is going to use their imagination. We're going to draw straight out for them of what it looks like doing our job. So first things first, it's very hard to write a successful cover letter until you've done some research on the company or organization or institution you are applying for. So this also relates to grad school as well. You're going to want to know their mission, vision, strategic plan. Sometimes you can only find one of those three. That's why I list all three. You don't have to find all three of those to write a successful cover letter. Some options there. Also, values are another one. If you know someone there, if you've done an informational interview, you can write about that in your cover letter as well. What about that interaction excited you? And then also being clear that you know what the job posting is asking for and how you contribute to that organization or contribute to that job posting. So a lot of big questions here. Usually, for the most part, I find the easiest way to find mission, vision, whatnot is typing in the company's name into Google followed by mission. Sometimes if I go into the website and try to find it myself, I find it's very difficult. And so having an idea of that and what are things that genuinely you're excited about that company's doing or that values match. This is also a good opportunity for you to figure out, is this a place where I want to work? It's also a way to figure out if an organization may be a place where you can thrive or that's going to support you and your identities. So for example, personally, diversity, inclusion, equity is all very important to me. And I don't feel like I would be successful in an organization that didn't have had that as a value. And so when I'm looking and doing this research, I'm also looking at, do they have things like that that are going to make me feel connected to it? Some folks look at their discrimination policies. Are they nuancing gender identity and gender expression if that's a value of yours? Are they clearly, I know one of the ones folks are looking at a lot right now is, if the organization has a Black Lives Matter statement, is one way to figure out where's this organization at and things that are important to you. So some different things and strategies for finding information. Okay, so I like to talk about the cover letter in 3 paragraphs. They don't have to be 3 paragraphs. Actually, the one I sent you all, that resume that had a cover letter on it, is 4 paragraphs. But I like to talk beginning, middle, end. So beginning, we're going to grab their attention. So we're going to state the position and the name of the company. We're making it very clear that we wrote this cover letter for this company. We're going to open with why we're interested, or a connection that we have based on the research we've done. And then we're going to quickly highlight a couple of qualifications. So very short, sweet, to the point to grab their attention. So in that mock resume I sent you all, hopefully you're seeing that there. And in that mock resume, I'm also highlighting the values of that company. You'll hopefully notice some of these values showing up in that mock cover letter I sent. I'm going to talk about this middle portion in a second. I'm actually going to go to the end because it's a little more straightforward. So you're going to end the cover letter with restating your interest in the organization, including how to best contact you. Because my contact information is in my header, and you want to make sure that your header on your resume and cover letter match. That way, if the documents get separated, it's easy for the employer to find which one goes with which. But because my contact information is at the top, I usually write, feel free to contact me using the information above, right? You don't have to rewrite all the information if it's already in the header. Thanking them for their time, consideration, looking forward to hearing from you, so on and so forth. So the middle part is really the meat of it. And I like to write a story. So you all notice, hopefully, in that mock cover letter I sent you when you have a chance to read it later, I tell a story about a capstone project. Oh, and I didn't mention this before, but everything on that resume and cover letter about me is a lie except for my header. So you all do have my contact information if you want to set up an appointment or anything. Anyways, so the middle is storytelling. So in that mock cover letter, I tell a story about a capstone project, and I go from start to finish. I talk about the team I'm working on, how I'm helping with problem solving, how I'm utilizing my skills. And so when you're reading that, I'm hoping that you actually see me doing it. And that's the goal here, is to paint that picture. So align your skills. So you would choose a story that talks about skills that are relevant to the job you're applying for or the internship. Right, how you have demonstrated your qualifications. So making sure you're restating that you meet the minimum qualifications. I'm including specific results or outcomes when you have used your skill. So if you have like, we won second place, or and I manage a budget of X amount of dollars. So when you have outcomes and results, make sure you're clearly stating those. Now, that mock resume I sent you all also has a short paragraph of talking about being from South Korea, and how that provides a global perspective and talks about it from an asset based lens. And so that's on there because you don't have to talk about that, right? I wouldn't have to name specific aspects of my identities or those sorts of things. It would just be demonstrating that if you choose to do so, how you can talk about it from an asset-based lens and demonstrating to an employer what you bring because of that background. But granted, you don't have to provide that sort of information. It's just an example of it. Questions, comments, concerns, jokes about cover letters? One thing I'll notice on cover letters sometimes is I'll do this. I think it has to do with my identity of being a woman, is I'll write things like, I believe I will be a great asset to your company, or I think that these are my skills. And so what I encourage you all to do, especially if you use that language a lot, is to read it without it. I will be an asset to your team. Here are my skills. And feeling like if that's comfortable for you, and if that helps you identify your skills in a different way. Another thing I'll note is there was a research that looked at gender on the binary, and it looked at when will someone apply for a job, and it found that men will apply for a job so long as they meet 60% of the qualifications, and women won't apply unless it's 100% of the qualifications. So also encouraging you all to apply for things even if you don't meet all the qualifications, because sometimes depending on the company, some have very strict rules, but some they just put like their dream list, right? And what's the chance of you getting that dream applicant? And so it's I tell folks, if there's something you see you're really interested in, you're not sure you meet it, put your name in the hat, right? Get your information out there. Okay, I just looked at time and I realized we only have 4 minutes left. And I won't be able to take questions at the end. Unfortunately, I have an appointment at 2:00. And so I'm going to put my email in the chat now so that you all have it. And then I'm also going to re-put the link for the assessment, because you'll all need to take that again at the end here. Alrighty. So real quick, here's our Career Center website. We have something called a Resource Center that has lots of different things. That's different career related topics, career interest areas, and then identity specific ones. So I encourage you all to take a look at some of our resources. We have about 300 on there. So you might find something of interest. Attending Career Center events. So we have fairs, connect events, industry specific events. So always make sure you're checking Handshake. Employers also host their own events on there, which could be a great way to start making connections as well. If you are nervous or anxious, even thinking about connecting that way, feel free to make an appointment. We can talk about it. We can come up with a game plan. We can talk about what it actually looks like. Personally, I don't like to get myself into situations unless at least I have an idea of what things are going to look like. I'm so happy to do that with anyone. And then some information about how to utilize our services. So to meet one-on-one, we have drop-ins as well as appointments. This drop-in is actually a lie. So our drop-ins are Mondays, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and then Fridays, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So we just have 10 to noon on Monday and Friday, and the rest is 10 to 2. And here are some topics you can consider getting connected with or talking about. We also do appointments. We don't do any in-person right now. Everything is phone or online using Zoom. To get connected with appointment, you can go to to Handshake and schedule your own. You call our front desk, you can email directly. And then also, I'll just, yep. Thank you, Chris. I was just about to go and share my screen to show you all what this looks like. So on our website, to get connected with drop-ins during that time, you go to our homepage, career.collegestate.edu. And actually, this is going to show up on any of our pages. So if you're like looking through things and then you want to get connected, you can. You just hit this button down here at the bottom right. You click that you're here for a drop-in, you put your information, and there is a human behind there who will respond to you. And so know that it's not a computer that will respond, it is a person. If you use that chat button during hours we're not open, we will get an email and get back to you. To find all the information about how to get connected and whatnot, our page has this icon that says connect one-on-one. And that's going to have those drop-in hours, that link to Handshake, so on and so forth. And then I had mentioned a resume guide that is also up here in this corner. Just so you all know, you do have access to the Career Center up to a year past graduation. So no, after you graduate, you still have access to us. Alrighty, you have my contact info. Please take that assessment for us. It'll be much appreciated. Yeah, and thank you all for being here. I hope you all enjoyed yourself. I enjoyed myself. Thank you all. You're all very welcome. Please make sure you went ahead and clicked on that URL because I will have to close out the meeting here in about 30 seconds to get to my appointment. Sorry for the quick turnaround, everybody.